It arrived on an ordinary Wednesday morning. I didn't know that this small, seemingly insignificant moment would set everything into motion. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, the quiet hum of the city filtering in through the window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the floor. The world was still, almost too still. But then the sound of a knock at the door broke the silence. I stood, puzzled. It wasn't like anyone came by early. No one had ever knocked at our door at 7:30 a.m. When I opened it, there was no one standing on the other side. Just a white envelope on the doorstep. I bent down, picked it up, and immediately noticed the distinct handwriting. It was Claire's. I froze. Claire, my wife of 8 years, had never sent me a letter. We talked, we texted, we emailed. But a letter? That wasn't something she did. I stood there for a moment, the envelope in my hands, feeling a chill creep down my spine. I knew, deep down, that this wasn't going to be good. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I think we need to talk," the letter began. That was it. No explanation, no elaboration. Just that. A cold, stark command to talk. I stared at the letter for a while, trying to process what it meant. I could feel my pulse quicken. Talk? About what? I had no idea, but I knew one thing for certain. This was the beginning of something I wasn't ready for. By the time I had finished my coffee, I had already made up my mind. I couldn't wait. I needed to speak with her, to figure out what this cryptic letter meant. So, I grabbed my coat and headed out the door, the cold morning air biting at my skin as I made my way to the office. Claire worked from home, but I had no idea if she was there. The letter had given me nothing to go on. Still, I had to try. The drive felt longer than usual, the minutes dragging on as my thoughts raced. What could it possibly be? Had I missed something? Had I said or done something wrong? I arrived at our building, parked my car, and walked up to our apartment. My hand shook slightly as I reached for the door, my breath coming out in shallow bursts. I knocked 3 times. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time, and I could feel my heart beginning to race. Still no answer. I hesitated, then reached for the door handle. It was unlocked. I stepped inside. The apartment was eerily quiet. Claire's desk was cluttered with design papers, her coffee mug left half full on the counter. But there was no sign of her. No note, no text message, no explanation. I took a deep breath and called out, "Claire?" My voice sounded small in the vast, empty apartment. No response. My stomach tightened as I walked into the living room, my footsteps echoing in the silence. And then I saw it. On the coffee table was another letter. This one wasn't from Claire. It was addressed to me. I felt my heart drop into my stomach as I picked it up. This one was sealed with wax, the symbol of a company I didn't recognize. I ran my fingers over the seal, my mind racing with questions. Who could this be from? I tore it open with trembling hands. "Mr. Hayes, we regret to inform you that due to unforeseen circumstances, your marriage with Claire Hayes has been terminated." I stopped reading. My breath caught in my throat as the words blurred in front of my eyes. The letter felt heavy in my hands, like it was too much to bear. But the words didn't stop there. "Claire has initiated a legal separation. Please be advised that all further communications regarding the dissolution of your marriage will be handled through our office. You may contact us to arrange the necessary steps." I dropped the letter. My world, in that moment, shattered. I didn't understand. This wasn't how things were supposed to happen. Claire, she couldn't have just done this. Not without saying something. Not like this. But the letter was clear. I stood there in the silence of the apartment, trying to piece together what had just happened. Why hadn't she told me? Why didn't she warn me? I was alone, and all I had were questions. I picked up the phone and dialed Claire's number, my hands shaking. But it went straight to voicemail. I stood there, holding the letter in my hands like it was some kind of curse. The words seemed to swim in front of my eyes, refusing to make sense. I tried to focus, but the reality of what I was reading felt like a punch to the gut. Claire had filed for divorce. The room spun around me, and for a moment, I couldn't move. I stood frozen in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life I thought I understood. Photographs of vacations, mementos from our wedding day, her favorite books scattered around the coffee table. Every corner of this apartment was filled with memories of our life together, memories that now seemed meaningless, tainted by this single, cold piece of paper. The phone in my hand buzzed, snapping me back to reality. It was a text message from Claire. My heart skipped a beat as I unlocked my phone and opened the message. Logan, I need to talk to you. Please don't do anything rash. I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing. Sorry? Sorry for what? Sorry for destroying everything we built together? Sorry for betraying me in the most brutal way possible? I stood there, holding the phone in my hands, every fiber of my being screaming at me to reach out to her, to demand answers, to confront her. But I didn't know if I was ready to hear the truth. What if it was worse than I thought? What if there was someone else, someone she'd been seeing behind my back? I didn't know how long I stood there, trying to process everything. I just knew I had to get out of the apartment. I needed space to think, to breathe. So, I grabbed my jacket, shoved my wallet into my pocket, and walked out the door. The cool air hit me like a slap in the face as I stepped into the hallway, but it did nothing to ease the growing sense of dread that had settled deep inside me. I wandered aimlessly for hours, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts, questions, and fear. What had happened? Why hadn't I seen the signs? The little moments, her distance, the late nights, the phone calls she always took in another room. They were all there, but I had chosen to ignore them. I thought it was just stress or the usual chaos of life. But this was something else entirely. I didn't return home until late that night, after the city had settled into a quiet hum. I didn't know what to expect when I walked through the door, but I wasn't ready for the sight that greeted me. Claire was sitting on the couch, her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The sight of her, so vulnerable, so broken, made my chest tighten. I wanted to feel angry, to shout at her, but instead, I felt something I wasn't prepared for, sympathy. I didn't speak at first. I just stood there, watching her, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Her voice was shaky as she spoke. Logan, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to hurt you less. My heart wrenched. Tell me what, Claire? What's going on? The words came out more desperately than I intended. She wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath. I never wanted it to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you. She paused, her hands trembling as she clutched the fabric of her dress. But I've been seeing someone else. It's been going on for months, and I don't know how to stop it. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, my vision blurring as her words sank in. You're seeing someone else? I asked, my voice flat. You've been cheating on me? Claire nodded, tears spilling down her face. I didn't mean for it to happen, Logan. But it did, and I can't go back. I've fallen in love with him. The world felt like it had just shattered around me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For years, I had been blind, thinking we were happy, thinking everything was fine. But it wasn't. She had been living a lie, and I had been living it with her. I never wanted to hurt you, Claire continued, her voice breaking. But I can't live a lie anymore. I thought I could keep going, but I can't. I took a step back, the weight of her words hitting me all at once. My mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. But it was. It was real, and there was no going back. I couldn't look at her anymore. I needed space. I needed air. So, I turned and walked toward the door. Before I could leave, Claire called out to me, her voice pleading. Logan, please don't leave like this. But I couldn't hear her anymore. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night air, leaving her behind. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My mind was racing, spinning in every direction. I tried to make sense of everything Claire had said. I walked around the apartment, aimlessly at first, and then with purpose, looking for something, anything that could explain this. But there was nothing. No signs, no clues, no hidden messages. I had spent years trusting her, believing in us. And now, everything I thought I knew had been shattered. The next morning, I did what anyone in my position would do. I called my best friend, Jason. He was the one person I could count on, the guy who had been there through thick and thin, who knew all the details of my life. If anyone could help me sort through the mess, it was him. But Jason's reaction wasn't what I expected. When I told him what had happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Logan, I don't know what to say, man. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice tinged with disbelief. I just don't get it, Jason. I thought we were happy. I thought she loved me. I stopped myself, taking a breath. She's been seeing someone else. For months. And now she's just gone. What the hell do I do? Jason's voice softened. You know, sometimes people fall out of love. It's the hardest thing, but it happens. I thought we were different. I thought she was different, I said, my voice breaking. How could she do this to me? Logan, I don't know, man. But listen, Jason continued. You can't fix this. You can't make her stay. If she's already checked out, there's nothing you can do. I slammed my fist into the table, the anger and hurt rising in me like a tidal wave. But she's my wife, Jason. She promised. How do I let go of all the years we've spent together? How do I just accept that she's gone? Jason was silent for a moment. You take it one step at a time. You grieve. You get angry. You cry. You do whatever you need to do. And then, when you're ready, you let go? I wasn't ready. I wasn't even close. But I had no choice. There was no magic fix for this. There was no way to rewind the clock and make everything go back to how it was before. And as much as I hated it, Jason was right. It was over. I had to face that reality. After I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the wall, feeling completely and utterly lost. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. So I did the only thing that made sense at that moment. I left. I needed to get away. I needed to clear my head. The city felt suffocating, and I couldn't be there anymore. So, I grabbed my coat, my keys, and just drove. I didn't have a destination, and that was exactly what I needed. I drove for hours, watching the scenery blur around me, my thoughts still tangled in confusion and rage. I couldn't stop thinking about Claire. How had she been so casual about it? So cold? How had she fallen for someone else without even telling me? I thought about all the moments I had missed, the little signs that I had overlooked. But in the end, it didn't matter. It was done. It was over. By the time I stopped, the sun was setting. I found myself in a small town on the outskirts of the city, far from everything that had tied me to my old life. I didn't know why I had come here, but for the first time in hours, I felt a small sense of relief. It wasn't much, but it was something. I checked into a hotel, a cheap, run-down place that didn't ask questions, didn't offer small talk. Just a room and a bed. I didn't care about anything else. I needed to be alone, to think, to try to figure out what came next. But my peace was short-lived. As soon as I entered the room and collapsed onto the bed, my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Claire. Her message was short, direct, and to the point. I need to see you. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the reply button. What could she possibly have to say? What could she say that would fix this? That would fix us? The truth was, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to sit in front of her and listen to her explain her actions, to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear the reasons behind her betrayal. I didn't want to hear the truth. But something in me, something weak, something hopeful, told me I had to. I had to see her one last time, to understand what had happened. Because as much as I hated to admit it, a part of me still loved her. A part of me still wanted her. I stared at the phone for a while longer, then typed my reply. I'll be there, but you better be ready for the truth. And with that, I set out for the meeting that would either give me closure or destroy me completely. I arrived at the cafe, the one we used to visit every Sunday morning before everything fell apart. The familiar buzz of voices, the clinking of coffee cups, the low hum of background music, everything felt the same. But nothing was the same anymore. Claire was already sitting at a table near the window, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup, staring out at the street. She hadn't seen me yet, and I stood there for a moment, just watching her. She looked different, not in a dramatic way, but there was a certain coldness in her posture, a distance in the way she carried herself. The woman I had known, who had laughed with me, who had held me through hard times, who had been my partner in every sense of the word, was gone. And in her place was this stranger. I took a deep breath and walked over to her, every step feeling heavier than the last. When she finally looked up, her eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw something in her expression, guilt, regret, something I couldn't quite place. Logan, she said, her voice soft but shaky. I didn't sit down immediately. Instead, I stood there, looking at her. I was trying to hold it together, to keep my emotions in check, but my heart was racing. I couldn't help it. I was angry and hurt, but above all, I was confused. Claire, what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was trying not to break down, trying to stay composed, but the question had been eating away at me. Why had she done this? Why hadn't she come to me first? She took a shaky breath, and for a moment, I thought she might start crying. But she didn't. Instead, she simply looked at me with those sad, exhausted eyes. I didn't know how to tell you, Logan. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, my voice rising without meaning to. You think this doesn't hurt? You think I'm just going to sit here and listen to you explain why you've been seeing someone else behind my back for months? I could feel my hands clenching into fists, my whole body tense with the weight of everything that had happened. But Claire didn't flinch. She just stared at me, her expression unreadable. I didn't plan for it to happen, she said quietly, looking down at her coffee cup. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It just happened. My heart sank as I listened to her words. It just happened. I repeated, the bitterness in my voice impossible to hide. You're telling me you fell in love with someone else, and it just happened? You just let it happen? Claire's eyes flickered with emotion, but she didn't respond. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. She pushed it toward me, and my gut twisted. What's this? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. It's the divorce papers, she said softly, her voice cracking. I know you've seen them, but I wanted to hand them to you in person. I stared at the envelope, not knowing what to do. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to tell her that none of this was real, that we could fix it somehow. But the other part of me, the part that had been betrayed, knew the truth. This was it. This was the end. I didn't take the papers. Instead, I stood there, staring at them as though they were a foreign object. You're really doing this? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. You're really ending everything just like that? Claire looked away, her eyes welling up with tears. I never wanted this to be easy. But I think you know as well as I do that we're not the same anymore. We've changed. I've changed. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her that she didn't get to just throw us away, that I deserved more than this. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. I don't understand, Claire. I thought we were happy. I thought we had something real. We did, she whispered. But sometimes love just fades. And I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't stay in a marriage that felt like it was falling apart. I clenched my jaw, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. This wasn't the woman I had married. This wasn't the person who had promised to stand by me through thick and thin. She was a stranger now, and I didn't know how to process that. Is he worth it? I asked, my voice raw with pain. The other guy? Is he worth losing everything? Claire didn't answer right away. She just sat there, her hands shaking as she wiped a tear from her cheek. I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe. For a long moment, there was silence between us. I wanted to scream, to break everything, to demand answers, but I couldn't. I felt numb, as though all the energy had been drained out of me. This was it. This was the final conversation. I stood up, the papers still lying untouched on the table. I didn't look at Claire again as I turned and walked away. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away. I had to leave. I didn't even know how I got home that night. I drove aimlessly, trying to outrun the thoughts that wouldn't stop swirling in my mind. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected her to walk away. But I had to accept it now. The marriage, the life we had built, it was over. And all I had left was the silence. The days that followed the meeting with Claire felt like a blur. My mind was fogged with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, confusion, sadness. But most of all, there was a strange numbness, like I was walking through my life in a daze. I didn't know who I was anymore. The life I had worked so hard to build, the life I thought I understood, had been ripped apart in the span of a few hours. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. The thought of sitting in my office, pretending everything was normal, was unbearable. I stayed home, pacing from room to room, staring at the walls, at the photos of us, at the reminders of what used to be. It was like I was living in a house full of ghosts, every corner haunted by memories that now felt hollow. By the second day, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to get out of the apartment. I needed to do something that would make me feel alive again, even if just for a moment. I grabbed my jacket, slammed the door behind me, and headed toward the bar down the street. It wasn't a place I usually went, too noisy, too crowded, too full of people I didn't know. But I didn't care. I needed noise. I needed distraction. I walked in, the familiar scent of whiskey and stale beer hitting me as I approached the bar. The bartender, a guy I'd seen before but never really talked to, gave me a nod and a weary smile. He'd probably seen his fair share of broken men, so he didn't ask questions when I ordered the strongest drink they had. I took a seat at the far end of the bar, nursing my drink in silence. I wasn't looking for company. I wasn't looking for answers. I just needed to drown the thoughts that kept gnawing at me. I hadn't been sitting there long when someone slid onto the stool next to mine. I didn't bother looking up. It was just another patron, probably looking for a drink, maybe to forget their own problems. But then, the voice spoke, one I hadn't expected to hear. Logan. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I turned slowly, my eyes narrowing as I saw who was sitting next to me. It was Sarah, one of Claire's closest friends. We had never been close, not in the way Claire and Sarah were, but we had shared casual conversations, dinners, parties. I had never expected Sarah to be part of this. She smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile I was used to. It was hesitant, almost awkward. I didn't think I'd see you here, she said, her tone soft. I blinked, unsure of what to say. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone about what had happened, especially not Sarah. But I couldn't ignore her either. She was here, sitting right next to me, and I had no idea why. I didn't think I'd be here either, I muttered, taking a swig from my glass. What are you doing here? Sarah hesitated, looking down at the counter for a moment before meeting my gaze again. I heard about Claire. About what happened. She bit her lip, like she was struggling with the words. I wanted to check on you. I don't know what to say. I know this must be hard. Hard. That was an understatement. I let out a humorless laugh. You don't know the half of it. For a moment, we both sat there in silence, the weight of the conversation hanging between us. I didn't know what she expected from me, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I don't understand, Sarah. I don't understand how this could happen. Claire and I stopped myself, clenching my jaw. I thought we were good. I thought we were happy. Sarah sighed, rubbing her forehead. You were happy, Logan. But sometimes things change. People change. And I don't know how to say this, but I think Claire has been struggling for a long time. And I think, deep down, she was looking for something she didn't have anymore. I felt my stomach churn. Are you saying she was unhappy with me? That she just gave up? No, Sarah said quickly, shaking her head. It's not like that. It's just, she didn't know how to handle it. She didn't know how to tell you what was going on inside her head. It was easier for her to shut down than to face it. I sat back, trying to process what she was saying. So, you're telling me it's my fault? That I somehow missed all the signs? My voice trembled, and I hated that it did. No, Logan, Sarah said gently. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just trying to explain what I think happened. Claire didn't know how to handle everything. And, yes, she made mistakes. She's admitted it. But I think part of her really regrets it. I shook my head, frustrated. It's too late for regrets, Sarah. It's too late for apologies. She didn't argue with me. Instead, she reached over and placed a hand on mine, her touch warm, almost comforting. I know, but I just thought you should know that Claire never wanted to hurt you. She doesn't want to lose you. I think she's scared. I pulled my hand away, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. This wasn't what I wanted to hear. I didn't want pity. I didn't want some broken explanation. I just wanted answers. I just wanted to know why she couldn't come to me before it all spiraled out of control. I need to think, I muttered, standing up. Thanks for coming by, but I can't do this right now. Without waiting for a response, I turned and left the bar, stepping back into the cold night air. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do next. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in this place, stuck in the middle of everything that had already fallen apart. I don't know how long I walked that night, but by the time I reached my car, the world felt like it had shifted under my feet. Sarah's words had done little to ease the storm brewing inside me. I didn't want her pity, and I didn't need her half-hearted explanations about Claire. The truth was, Claire had made her choice. She had left me without a second thought, and no amount of sugarcoating from Sarah would change that. I sat in my car for what seemed like hours, just staring at the steering wheel, the weight of everything crashing down around me. I couldn't let go of the image of Claire sitting across from me, telling me she had fallen for someone else, that our entire marriage had been reduced to nothing but a broken promise. I tried to breathe through it, to find a way to move past the pain. But it wasn't that simple. It never was. And then, In the midst of it all, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. "Logan, I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. But I want you to understand something. This wasn't easy for me. I never meant to hurt you. I think about you every day, but I can't go back. I don't know if I'll ever be the same. I just need some time." I read the message again, then again, trying to process the words. Time. What did that even mean? She wanted time? Time to figure things out. Time to be with him? To figure out how to be a better person without me? It felt like a cruel joke, a mockery of everything we had. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But my thumb hovered over the screen, the urge to reply gnawing at me. What was the point, though? She had made her choice. She had already walked away, and nothing I could say or do would bring her back. I couldn't beg her. I couldn't plead for something that wasn't mine to keep. But something inside me snapped, a quiet voice telling me I had to stop letting her control the narrative. I was done playing the victim. I was done being the guy who always took the high road. If Claire thought she could walk away and leave me with nothing, she was wrong. I drove home, the streets flashing by in a blur, and parked in the lot outside my apartment. For the first time in days, I felt like I was in control, like I was finally taking back some power. The next morning, I woke up with a clear mind. I knew what I had to do. Claire had made her move, and now it was time for me to make mine. I got dressed, grabbed my phone, and opened the contact list. My finger hovered over her name. But instead of texting Claire, I sent a message to my lawyer. I need to start the process. I want the divorce to be final. The text was short, but it sent a clear message. I was done. There was no going back. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for Claire to decide what she wanted. The rest of the day felt like a blur. I packed up the things I needed, organized some paperwork, and started making plans. I knew I couldn't stay in the apartment. It was a tomb now, filled with the echoes of what had been. But the hardest part was still ahead of me, facing Claire. I wasn't sure how it would go. I didn't know if she would even care. But I had to do it. I couldn't let her think that she had the power to control everything anymore. The moment came a few days later. Claire reached out again, asking if we could meet. My heart pounded as I read the message. I almost didn't respond, but I knew I needed to. If for no other reason than to let her know I was done. We met at the same cafe. She was already sitting at a table when I arrived, her eyes tired, her face pale. She looked nothing like the woman I had married. There was no trace of the joy or love she used to have. Instead, she was a shell, a stranger to me. I sat down across from her, but I didn't speak at first. I just looked at her, trying to read the expression on her face. She was the first to break the silence. "Logan, she stopped herself, biting her lip as though trying to gather her thoughts. "I know I've hurt you, and I can't take that back. I just want you to know that I never wanted to destroy you." I studied her for a long moment. She looked so broken, but it wasn't enough. The damage was done. It didn't matter how many apologies she offered or how sorry she was. The woman who sat before me wasn't the one I had trusted. She wasn't the one I had loved. "I don't want your apologies, Claire," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I've heard enough of those. What I want is my life back. I'm not going to sit here and beg you to choose me. I'm done." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw the tiniest flicker of the person she used to be, the person I had loved. But it wasn't enough to change my mind. "I'm filing for divorce today," I said, watching her face drain of color. "I don't need your explanations anymore. This is over, and it's time you understood that." The words felt final as they left my mouth. There was no turning back. I had no more tears to cry, no more questions to ask. All I wanted was to move on, to find a way to heal, even if I didn't know how yet. Claire didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open. For a moment, it felt like we were both frozen in time. But I knew this was the end. The chapter had closed, and there was no going back to the way things were. I stood up, leaving her sitting there, her eyes following me as I walked out of the cafe. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt free. I thought that walking out of that cafe, leaving Claire sitting there, would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. But as I stepped out into the cool air, something strange happened. A quiet settled over me, a feeling I hadn't had in what seemed like forever. The weight of everything I had been carrying, the lies, the betrayal, the confusion, felt like it had lifted, even if just for a moment. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I didn't feel the knot in my stomach, the constant tension in my shoulders, the never-ending questions buzzing in my mind. Instead, I felt nothing. It was as though the last remnants of the man I had been before Claire had made her decision had been buried with her. It wasn't peace, not really. But it was something. I didn't go home right away. The thought of returning to the apartment where I had spent so many nights with her, the place where our memories lingered like ghosts, was suffocating. I needed space, a place where I could think without being haunted by what had been. I found myself driving through the city, just letting the miles stretch between me and her. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I needed to keep moving. The streets blurred past, the lights of the city reflecting off the windshield. I didn't even pay attention to the time. The world felt like it was moving too fast, but at the same time, I was stuck in slow motion, unable to escape the place I had been forced into. At some point, I ended up at the edge of town, a quiet park I used to visit when I needed time to think. I parked the car and sat there for a while, staring out at the small pond in front of me. The water was still, like a mirror, reflecting the dark sky above. I wasn't sure how long I had been sitting there when I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I turned to see a man walking toward me, a face I didn't recognize. He was tall, wearing a jacket and jeans, his hands stuffed in his pockets. For a moment, I thought he might be someone who was simply out for a late-night walk. But when he came closer, he stopped and gave me a cautious look. "Logan Hayes," he asked, his voice low. I raised an eyebrow, surprised that he knew my name. I didn't recognize him, and I certainly wasn't in the mood for strangers. "Yeah," I replied, still on edge. He nodded slowly, then took a step forward. "I'm Matt. I know this might be a little strange, but I need to talk to you." I stared at him, confused. "Talk to me about what?" He hesitated, clearly unsure of how to proceed. "It's about Claire." My stomach dropped. The name hung in the air like a curse. "What about her?" I asked, my voice suddenly sharp. Matt took a deep breath and sat down beside me without waiting for permission. "I know this isn't easy for you, Logan, but I think you need to hear what I have to say. It's important. It's about what's been going on between Claire and me." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "What's going on between you and Claire?" I echoed, my mind racing. Was this guy the one she had left me for? He nodded again, his expression serious. "Yeah, it's me. I've been seeing Claire for the past few months." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt the ground beneath me shift as the truth washed over me in waves. I knew there had to be someone else. I had suspected it for weeks, but hearing it spoken aloud, hearing the confirmation from the man himself, felt like the final blow. "I'm sorry, man," Matt continued, his tone apologetic but distant. "I know this isn't how you wanted to hear it, but I just thought you should know the truth. I didn't want to hurt you, but Claire and we've been spending a lot of time together." I couldn't speak. I couldn't process the reality of what he was telling me. The betrayal had already cut deep, but this was something else. To know that Claire had been with him, to know that she had turned to him while I was left in the dark, it was a humiliation I wasn't ready for. But something in me snapped. I didn't want to show weakness. I didn't want him to see the effect his words were having on me. So, I stood up, pushing my hands into my pockets, forcing my body to stay steady. "I appreciate you telling me, but I don't need to hear anything else. I've heard enough." Matt looked up at me, his eyes apologetic but firm. "I get it. I know this is hard, but Claire's made her decision. She's not the same person you knew, Logan. She's not the woman you married anymore." I turned away, my heart pounding in my chest, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I needed to walk away, to let this sink in. I didn't need to know any more about their affair, about how long it had been going on, or how she had justified it. All that mattered was that it was over. Claire had chosen him, and I needed to move forward. I didn't know where I was going, but I walked. The streets of the city felt colder now, empty in a way they hadn't before. It was as if everything had changed overnight. The person I had been, the life I had known, it was gone. The days that followed that conversation with Matt were a blur. I stayed out late, wandered aimlessly through the city, and spent hours at the local gym, trying to drown out the thoughts that kept circling in my mind. Claire's betrayal still stung, but with every step I took away from the past, I felt a little lighter. I didn't have all the answers, and I still didn't know how to fully let go of everything I thought I had with Claire, but I was starting to realize something important. My life wasn't over. I wasn't defined by my marriage, by her choices, or by the pain that had been forced on me. There was more waiting for me if I could just open myself up to it. One evening, after another long, aimless day, I decided to take a walk in the park. It was a quiet, peaceful place, and I had spent many mornings here when things had been good, when I could remember a time when everything felt simple and right. It felt strange to walk these paths again, but somehow, it felt like a way to reclaim some piece of myself that had been lost. As I wandered past the lake, lost in thought, I heard a familiar voice. Logan. I turned to find Jessica, a woman I'd met a few months earlier at a work event. She had been friendly and easy to talk to, someone I had clicked with but never pursued further. The moment we had shared, light-hearted and easy, had been the last thing on my mind when everything with Claire exploded. But now, there she was, standing in front of me, a smile tugging at her lips. I didn't expect to see you here, she said, taking a step closer. You okay? I smiled, the first genuine one in days, and nodded. I'm getting there. It's been a rough few weeks, but I'm managing. I know how it feels, she said softly. Life can throw some tough stuff at us, but it's about how we get back up, right? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. There was something about the way she spoke, calm, grounded, that made me feel like maybe I didn't have to figure everything out on my own. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as broken as I had convinced myself I was. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, I confessed, my voice quiet. It's hard to know where to go after something like this. I don't even know if I'm ready for a fresh start. Jessica tilted her head, offering me a soft, understanding smile. You don't have to be ready right away. Take your time. But don't forget that you have a future waiting for you. You have choices. You have the ability to move forward. And sometimes, the first step is just being open to what comes. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. The words she said, simple and true, resonated with me. I had been so caught up in the pain, in the aftermath of Claire's betrayal, that I had forgotten that there was more to life than that one chapter. There were new beginnings, new paths to follow, new experiences waiting for me if I chose to seek them. I looked around the park, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, the sky painted with hues of pink and gold. The world was still moving, still beautiful, even if I had been lost in the darkness for a while. Maybe I wasn't as lost as I thought. I don't know what the future holds, I said, my voice steadier now. But I'm ready to see what's out there. Jessica smiled, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I believed her. I wasn't alone. I didn't have to do this alone. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. As we walked out of the park together, I realized that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And whatever came next, I was ready to face it head on.